Hello, welcome to another amazing day of the Internet Computer BUIDL Bitcoin Hackathon powered by Encode. Today we are joined by an amazing speaker from Bioniq, Bob, who will be telling you about ordinals and how you can implement them in your project. After the session, I'll share a couple of important bits of information about the hackathon, but until then, feel free to enjoy Bob's workshop. Yeah, Bob, take it away as soon as you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. Always happy to chat ordinals, Bitcoin, BRC20, ORC20, SRC20, all the other meta protocols or JSON protocols being built on Bitcoin over the past couple months. Let me just share my screen and we will dig right into it. So I'm going to take you on a little journey through what has been ordinals over the past couple months. So it was around January 19th of this year. And Casey Rottermore, he created what people are calling ordinal theory. So I have here docs.ordinals.com. This is the ordinal theory handbook. And this outlines, what is this ordinal theory. So ordinals has three main components. The three components are, first, that we're going to number every Satoshi from when it was mined sequentially all the way up to it's almost 2.1 quadrillion, which is how many Satoshis there will be for Bitcoin, assuming a 21 million supply. So start from the very beginning. Every Coinbase, just number the Satoshis. That's the first component to ordinal theory. The second component is you take an image or you take other JSON in bytes, and then you store those bytes on the input of a Bitcoin transaction in the witness data section. So since 2017, we've had the witness section that was part of the SegWit upgrade. And you have a specific envelope structure. So there's a certain set of opcodes you can use that the ordinal protocol recognizes, and that is how you store an image on Bitcoin, is in the witness data. The witness data does get a 4x discount on storage costs. So it's a little more affordable, a little more economical to store data there in the witness data than it is to store it in other places, like some other protocols stored in like the multi-sig in a multi-sig transaction, or if it's really tiny, you could store in the op return. But in the witness data, it's economically favorable. So that's the second component to ordinals, is you're storing image data or other content or JSON actually on Bitcoin, 100% on chain. The third component to what ordinals are is you have to associate the image that's in the witness data and the input to an actual ordinal Satoshi. And to do that, the protocol dictates that the image in the input is associated with the first sat of the first output of a transaction. And that's how you connect the image to the token. So now you have a token, it's a Satoshi, it's a non-fungible Satoshi, a numbered component of Bitcoin, and it's associated with this image forevermore. So that is the ordinals protocol. And you can see that there are all kinds of like sat rarity type. I don't think we'll dig into that too much, but that's basically the gist of what ordinals are. Started January 20th. And you can see here, this is the Dune dashboard for ordinals marketplaces. It's just dune.com/domo/ordinals marketplaces. And you can see that there has been massive traction for ordinals over the last 3 months. Marketplaces have really only been come online about February, end of February. So we're like 3 months into it. Almost 180 million in volume, almost 400,000 trades, over 100,000 unique users. I just did a presentation a couple days ago, and it was only like 95,000 unique users. So pretty good to have another 15,000 new users in the last couple days. You can see that there are various marketplaces that are kind of leading the charge here. There's Unisat. Unisat is this one in the yellow. Unisat has probably the best user experience for BRC20. We'll chat about BRC20 in just a minute. Ordinals Wallet is another top marketplace you'll see here in the purple. And then Magic Eden is the other kind of major marketplace right now, and they're in the orange. And you can see, you know, marketplaces have had various levels of traction over the last few months, but, you know, there's clearly a lot of things going right for the Ordinals ecosystem. For me, I started building with Bioniq and with Tonic. We started building. It was at the very, 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 very beginning of this graph, except it was more like right here. It was like February 6th, where I'd seen enough in the Ordinals ecosystem to know that Ordinals was going to be absolutely massive. And so we started building. You know, we have a lot of product to build with Bioniq, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so, you know, we're still building now, but hoping to release very, very soon. So massive traction in Ordinals so far. One of the main reasons that Ordinals has been extremely successful is, I'll call them JSON protocols. So this is Bioniq. I want to show you just some examples of inscriptions. So you can see here that this is inscription 10,531,169, and you can see it's just a JSON object. It specifies the protocol. The protocol is BRC-20. The op is the operation. It's a transfer. And then the tick is the actual ticker for the token. This is like a fungible token standard, PSAT. And the amount is the amount that you want to transfer. So that's 2,000. Another example is a deploy. Someone is deploying a token here. This is the Reza token with a max supply and a limit per mint. And then there's got to be a mint in here somewhere. BRC20 transfer, BRC20 mint. Here's an example of a mint inscription where you're actually minting a token based on the total supply. So the reason why I wanted to talk about these JSON protocols is there are lots of them that people are starting to use all over the place on Bitcoin. You can see there's a BRC20. You can see there's an SNS. That's a SATS name service. You can see that there's, I think we have another one, ORC20 in here as well. And there are lots of meta protocols. So I wanted to talk about, you know, how are people using these JSON objects on Ordinals. So the first one I wanted to talk about is SATS names. You can see a couple SATS names like right here. This is an SNS. This is a registration. They're registering bingx.unisat. That's not even a SATS name. That's a Unisat name. But this one is SATS, cat with 3 T's, .sats. So SATS names was one of the very first JSON protocols to be added on top of Ordinals. Ordinals, it's like a meta protocol on top of Bitcoin. So it leverages Bitcoin for storing messages, and you leverage the consensus and the security of Bitcoin at the messaging layer, meaning you know what the messages are, you know what the order of the messages are. That's the benefit of building on Bitcoin. Then on top of that, people are starting to build meta protocols like the SATS name protocol. So SATS names is a meta protocol on top of Ordinals, which is a meta protocol on top of Bitcoin. I won't dive too deep into meta protocols right now, but there are obviously trade-offs. Meta protocols give you a lot of additional functionality in terms of what you can do. So people are doing name services, they're doing fungible tokens, they're trying to do staking and, you know, DeFi with these fungible tokens, all on, you know, meta protocols on Bitcoin. So SATS names, one of the first, and they have an API. You can check out their API. Essentially, the way SATS names works is anyone can claim a .sats name by just inscribing it, and whoever inscribes the name first owns the SATS name. So it's kind of like a open, free mint in a lot of ways, because anyone can claim any name that they want whenever they want, as long as they're the first one and their transaction goes through first, then you're the owner of that name. And so it's been really popular. About a couple 100,000 names have been registered through SATS names so far. And you can see there's kind of a protocol specification. So it talks to you, it tells you how you can deploy or how you can register an SNS name, along with which keys are required. And it also has information for the indexer side. So in order for JSON, or in order for SATS names to work, you have to have a SATS name indexer sitting on top of a Bitcoin node. And the indexer essentially takes all the messages from Bitcoin and then puts them all in order and then determines which ones are valid, parses everything out, and then makes that state available to then applications or users who are trying to use them. So that's SATS name. Another really big one that you may have heard about is BRC20, the infamous BRC20. BRC20 is a fungible token standard on Bitcoin. And I always tell people BRC20 is the least efficient and most annoying fungible token standard of all time. The creator even states, read every word. If you decide to test, these will be worthless. Use at your own risk. So the creator was very, very careful to say, this is an experiment. A lot of people hate BRC20. They say it's not very efficient. They say it's terrible for Bitcoin. It was really just an experiment. Because of ordinals, now you have this, storage layer on Bitcoin. I mean, you've basically always had a storage layer, but you've never had the tooling to use it more effectively. And so take, SegWit plus Taproot plus the tooling that Casey Rottermore built around Ord. And now you have the kind of fundamental components to create this ecosystem on top of Bitcoin, where now you can store stuff on Bitcoin like these JSON protocols. So there's been a ton of wild experimentation on Bitcoin over the last 3 months, more probably in the last 3 months than we've had in the last couple of years. And so it's a really exciting time. Bitcoin is for builders again. Lots of people coming from lots of different chains to come build on Bitcoin. People from Ethereum, people from Solana, people from Stacks, and other chains as well, all coming kind of back to Bitcoin. In a lot of cases, people were originally Bitcoiners, couldn't figure out a way to build on Bitcoin, so went elsewhere. And now that you can finally do things on Bitcoin again, a lot of people are coming back to their home chain, I guess you could say. So BRC20, another really, really popular protocol. Standard is pretty complicated. I mean, it's simple, but it's complicated. It's simple in that it's just a JSON blob, but to actually build an indexer, it's complicated. So I won't go too far in too deeply into that. So we have all of these JSON protocols. So these are the latest inscriptions that we have on Bitcoin right now. You can see we've had 10.5 million inscriptions. And we do see some images. If we scroll down, you can see some people are inscribing images. It looks like this is a .x from a .x, the .x name service. Ordinals wallet came out with a names protocol. It's basically just put whatever name you want and then use a dot and use whatever TLD you want, and then it'll count it as you're the first one to have done that. So you could do any kind of name. We get some other images. I'm just scrolling to give you a kind of feel for the latest inscriptions, what people are doing. There are some, you can see right here, there's some ORC20. ORC20 is a competing standard to BRC20. BRC20 was the first, has the most traction, is kind of limited in the functionality that you can do. And so a lot of people are trying to think up new protocols, new ways to make BRC20 better. ORC20 is one of those examples. Keep scrolling. Hey, look, we have a bitinfinity.sat. I wonder if that was an ICP person because of Bitfinity. Here's another interesting one. This is BTC domains. BTC domains tries to give you a .btc. Well, it gives you a BTC domain, but the way that they do it is you have to use their service in order to do it. So it inscribes 2 inscriptions for every registration. There's the registration, and then they have to inscribe something that basically certifies your inscription as correct. So it's kind of like a more centralized approach, but it is a cool way to do provenance, kind of the double inscription method of provenance, where now you can certify that something is valid. I'm just going to keep scrolling, see if there's anything else cool going on right now. Buy this domain.sats. BRC20, ORC20. Yeah, you can see kind of the flavor of activity around Ordinals right now. Some people doing cool images, cool collections. A lot of people leveraging these meta protocols. BRC20 is actually kind of like a meta protocol on a meta protocol because it's built on top of Ordinals. So there's some risks and, trade-offs to doing something like that. Here's a new one, ORC 721. This is similar to, I think, the GBRC 721. This is like a generative mint structure. So you can see the protocol, it's actually minting. You can see which collection it's part of, and then it's just a G for generative with brackets. This is basically telling you which layers to use for this collection. So instead of actually like inscribing an image like this, you actually just do a generative version of that image saying which layers to pull. Then you have some parent inscription. You can refer back to that parent inscription and get the which layers to use. And then the front end basically just has to use this to then generate the image itself. So it shows up as JSON here in Explorers, but would show up as an actual image for a front end that actually implements this generative standard. We haven't implemented this generative standard in Bioniq yet, but there are a couple of these floating around. ORC 721, and there's a generative BRC 721. Oh, looks like it's like it died on us. Anyway, so this is Bioniq. Let me actually take you to our staging. So as part of Bioniq, this is what we've built so far. We have a collections view. You can see all of the collections that have been inscribed so far. We're just pulling from the Ordinals wallet, open GitHub repo right now for these collections. You can see people are doing all sorts of collections in here. You can also just look at the inscriptions view. That's what we were just looking at. We have my inscriptions, where you can actually see what's in your wallet right now. I have some nice Bioniq and tonic themed inscriptions that I was using as a test. And then we have just kind of a built-in wallet right here. So you can hold Bitcoin, and you can receive, send, and convert Bitcoin to ckBTC and ckBTC back to Bitcoin. ckBTC, just to give a little primer for those that don't know, ckBTC is kind of like SBTC on Stacks. That'll be released later this year. ckBTC is like a wrapped Bitcoin on the internet computer. So you take your Bitcoin and you send it to the ckBTC minter, and then it will go in and will mint you ckBTC, and then you can transfer ckBTC really quickly. It's probably like 2 to 5 seconds for a transfer, and it only costs 10 sats. 10 sats is super low. Like the cheapest transfer I've ever had, this was like 3 sats per VB on Bitcoin. Like the cheapest transfer, it's 30 times more expensive to do. And with current sats per VB, current network fees on Bitcoin, this is probably like 900 times cheaper to do transfers with ckBTC. So the fee is basically zero and really, really fast. So ckBTC is going to be the main currency for Bioniq. You'll be able to buy or bid on auctions or offer, do everything that you would expect in an NFT marketplace using ckBTC. I mean, you can receive Bitcoin, you can receive ckBTC. Like I said, you can send, convert back and forth in either direction. Similarly, with your inscriptions, you'll be able to wrap your inscriptions into, I'll call them wrapped ordinals. So you'll take your Bitcoin, you'll wrap it to ckBTC, you'll take your ordinals, you'll wrap them to wrapped ordinals, and then you can transact all on the ICP side at the speed and cost of the internet computer instead of the speed and cost of Bitcoin. So I'm calling ICP a Bitcoin sidechain because it's a separate chain, separate consensus, and you have to peg in and out from Bitcoin in order to interact on the sidechain. That's basically our strategy with Bioniq. We want to make it really, really fast, no gas fees, no network fees, and really, really easy to use. With our login, we basically just use login with Gmail. We'll have additional login options in the future, but like our target audience is anyone with a Coinbase account or anyone with a Robinhood account. Like anyone that's heard of Bitcoin, we want to introduce them to Bitcoin NFTs, aka Ordinals on Bioniq. So this is different than most other marketplaces. If you remember back here, all of these marketplaces are PSBT marketplaces. This is partially signed Bitcoin transactions, except for Ordinals Market. Ordinals Market is building on Ethereum. So you actually take your ordinal and you would wrap it using Emblem Vault over to Ethereum, and then you would, trade with the Emblem Vault on Ordinals Market or OpenSea. Everyone else uses PSBTs. Partially signed Bitcoin transactions are ways to do trustless like swaps using just Bitcoin L1. The way it works is I say, okay, I have this ordinal. It's sitting on this SAT within this UTXO, and I want to give that to someone in exchange for 1 Bitcoin. And so then I sign my half of the transaction, and then someone else has to come and say, yeah, I have a Bitcoin and I want your ordinal. I will send it to you. And they sign their half of the transaction, and then you broadcast that transaction, and then it gets mined in a block. And then the swap happens. So that's what everyone is using. And in fact, we're actually using PSBTs in Bioniq to facilitate a lot of the things like wrapping and other kinds of trading things. So PSBTs are great. And yeah, hopefully marketplace release here in the next couple days. Well, maybe I shouldn't say a couple days, but a low number of weeks. There's a lot of like legal boxes to check, a lot of final testing to do, but we're getting very close. Can't wait to release. A little bit more on the Bitcoin side. I don't know if anyone's familiar with mempool.space. Mempool.space is Bitcoin Explorer. You can see here that there's a current sats per VB. This is basically the fee. It's like the network fee you have to pay in order to get your transaction into a block to then be mined. So on the right, all the purple blocks are blocks that have recently been mined. Looks like we're having fairly fortunate last 30 minutes. Usually you get a block about every 10 minutes. Oh, we just got another one. You saw that nice transition. We've had 4 blocks in the last 10 minutes, which is really good. That's why the fee is pretty low right now, 16. Haven't seen 16 in a while. It's been sitting closer to 50. So this is how Bitcoin works. You have all of these transactions sitting in blocks. You can see if I come back over here, I was trying to find a whole bunch of inscriptions to show you. Sometimes you can see inscriptions floating around. Yeah, see all of these, if you look at the amount, they're pretty close to 546 BTC, all of them. That means they're all inscriptions. 546 is the amount that Unisat uses with their inscription tool. Yeah, you can see all of these. They're at 546. Oh, there's a 330. So yeah, this is how Bitcoin works. And in order to use Bioniq, you will have to do a Bitcoin transaction. Wrapping essentially takes a Bitcoin transaction. The final thing I wanted to talk about here is just talking about kind of tooling that we've built already at Bioniq that can help you or someone you know build on ordinals. in order to build on Ordinals, let me kind of walk you through our tech stack at Bioniq. We have a full Bitcoin node that's running, fully synced with transaction index. Then we have the Ord client that sits on top. This is kind of the Ordinals indexer. It's a Rust library. You can get it from GitHub, and you install it, and then you have to sync. Essentially, it has to index the whole blockchain in order to find all the Ordinals and track where they are. It takes a while. It takes maybe a day or two. It takes maybe a day or two to get your Bitcoin node up and synced, maybe a couple days longer, depending on how beefy your machine is. Then a couple days to sync the Ord client on top. And then we have a modified Ord client that actually has a JSON API as part of it. So we're leveraging that to then power our own API. So we have an API that essentially is a fully synced Ordinals index, but it's in like a nice scalable Firebase API instead of on, the Ord index. This is all pretty centralized right now. I mean, that's how it is everywhere. There is an initiative that I just started like a week ago to build a decentralized Ordinals indexer on ICP. I think it would be really awesome to be able to, take something like maybe use Rust, maybe use Python like Kybra, and actually build an Ordinals indexer in Canister. You could either get blocks using HTTP out calls, or you could get blocks using update calls if you could get access to there's like a restricted API that the Bitcoin integration uses on ICP. And if you did something like that, you could just build in the Ordinals indexer right into the Canister. You could have a really nice decentralized indexer on ICP. So that's what I'm pushing for. My main mission or mantra these days has been, let's make Bitcoin better with ICP. And I think one of the ways we can do that is by building one of these indexers, build a fully decentralized indexer, 100% on chain on ICP. I think there are a lot of benefits to something like that. Other things that we've been doing on Bioniq, obviously, like I said, we're leveraging ckBTC, which was built by the DFINITY Foundation. Currently, the NNS controls that canister. And then we also built an Ordinals wrapper. So similar to ckBTC, it's almost like the CK Ordinals canister, but I've just been calling them wrapped Ordinals. So we have a wrapped Ordinals canister, so you can wrap Ordinals onto ICP. The way it works is it gives every Ordinal a unique BTC address in this canister. The tricky thing about transferring Ordinals is you need SAT control. SAT control means that you spend, the Ordinal sits on the first SAT of its output most of the time, and you don't want to send with like a UTXO before it, because then you might spend the Ordinal to fees. So you have to have SAT control, so you always, spend the Ordinal first. So we have this Ordinals wrapper canister. Obviously, there's the ckBTC canister. There's the API that we have, our Firebase API. And then we're also building a number of different like helper canisters. These helper canisters will be like, how do we connect an individual inscription like this one? How do we connect it to a collection? So how do we know, for example, that, all of these Bitcoin JPEGs, early inscriptions, how do we know these are all in the same collection, for example? So there's an off-chain way to do it right now. We're working on a canister to bring it on-chain. So there's just a simple canister you can call, and you can get, what is the status of this inscription? Does it have a wrapped form, or is it unwrapped? And what collection is it part of? So we'll have this kind of collection API. This collection API will be important if you want to do anything regarding like NFT gating, or like Ordinals, wrapped Ordinals based gating, or any kind of like ownership proving. And then we're also, let's see, API. We can make, if anyone here is interested in building on Ordinals, doing like anything with Ordinals, or with like BRC20 or ORC20, or anything with Ordinals at all, please DM me. You can find me on Twitter. I'm just at Bob Bodily on Twitter. Right here. please DM me on Twitter, and I would love to be, I'm offering free advisor services for this hackathon. So anyone building on ICP that wants to do anything with Bitcoin related to Ordinals, please reach out. Would love to hear what you're building. Would love to talk to you about all of the initiatives that I'm working on. Would love to hear about kind of how it all fits together, and would love to support you as much as possible. Another interesting idea. So I just barely figured out, in order to do inscribing in canisters, you can't do the normal way because you don't have Taproot. Taproot uses Schnorr signatures. And so I just figured out, if you scroll down here on Twitter, I just figured out how to inscribe using P2WSH. That's pay to witness script hash. It's a different kind of Bitcoin transaction, and it does work. Currently, these inscriptions are cursed. Cursed meaning they're not included by default in like the Ordinals indexer. It was included for a time on the Hero indexer, which is why I got this nice screenshot. They've since kind of patched their indexer so they don't show up anymore. But I'm working with the Ordinals team on including these. So soon we'll be able to have pay-to-witness script hash inscriptions that show up in normal Ordinals explorers, and you can do P2WSH inscriptions from the internet computer. So you could do a fully decentralized inscription service. You could do a decentralized launchpad. You could do a BRC20 token wrapper, for example. BRC20 token wrappers require require you to just the way that the standard works. It's kind of complicated, and you have to actually inscribe a transfer in order to send out. And so it's tricky to get balances out of like a wrapper canister. So yeah, those are some of the ideas for anyone building in the hackathon, doing some kind of BRC20 token wrapper or some other kind of token wrapper, or building some kind of utility for wrapped ordinals. We'll have a lot of kind of tools and resources here at Bioniq that you can build on. I think I'm getting pretty close to time. So yeah, really happy to take questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bob, for the wonderful workshop and for putting your contact out there and for reaching, helping to the hackers. Yeah, like Bob said, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Julian already asked a question earlier about what kind of stuff you want to see built, or what kind of stuff you'd recommend to build in the hackathon, but you've kind of answered that already. Yeah, guys, if you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm sure Bob would be happy to take them.
Yeah, Julian, let me just answer your question. So I know that they listed like non-custodial ordinal marketplace as one of the examples of what they could build. I think that was just kind of an example that was thrown out as like something you could do. Not saying specifically that should be done, and that's basically what we're doing at Bioniq. But there are tons of other interesting ways to leverage ICP and build on ordinals. Like this BRC20 token wrapper, you could actually build a token wrapper, and then you could transfer BRC20 token balances to the canister, and on the other side you can mint ICRC1 tokens, and then you now have fungible tokens on ICP that you can do DeFi with. So I think that's an interesting avenue. And then the Lomesh already tweeted out that there would likely be some grant money if anyone wants to build this indexer, this decentralized ordinals indexer on ICP. And so I think that's also an interesting path forward for anyone that's really looking to get their feet deep into ordinals.
Yeah, cool. There's actually another question from Julian. How can we use ordinals with smart contracts? Do I use them like regular NFTs, or should go more into that?
Yeah, so The way that we're doing this at Bioniq is we're just wrapping the ordinals onto ICP, and so it actually turns into like an ICP NFT. And so at that point, you can do whatever you want on the smart contract side. You could build some kind of like escrow service um, for these wrapped ordinals if you wanted to do some kind of other kind of smart contract platform. I mean, pick any smart contract platform that exists, whether it's on Ethereum or Solana or wherever, and you could build it for ordinals on ICP, leveraging this kind of wrapped ordinal standard.
Amazing. Thanks for
Yeah,
the wonderful explanation. Yeah.
Julian, feel free to DM me if you want to kind of like brainstorm or you want some feedback on interesting ways that we could potentially work together. We're at Bioniq, we're really interested in collaborating with anyone and everyone building in the space, specifically like Bitcoin on ICP. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Cool. There's a new question in the questions tab. Artem says, so pay-to-witness script hashes are not shown in most of Ordinal explorers now and requires a special means to view or use them. What's different with the standard Ordinals?
Yep. So pay-to-witness script hash are probably not shown in any Ordinals explorers anymore. It used to be shown in Hero, but not anymore. And so you have to have some special way to view them and use them right now. I'm working on a PR to the Ord repo, and I will submit that and discuss with Ordinally and RAF, and find some block height at which those will then become normal ordinals. Right now, they are cursed ordinals. Cursed ordinals means they're not going to show up, but they technically fall within the spec, or the way that they would like to define the protocol, the way that we would like to define the protocol. And so as soon as we get them, as soon as we get this particular PR into Ord and get a certain block height, then we'll know that any of these kinds of like PTWSH inscriptions will be valid and will show in the Ordinals Explorer, and will show everywhere essentially. All indexers will update to include these. So I'm very optimistic that this is going to happen. There are some limitations with P2WSH compared to Taproot. You only get 10 kilobytes, whereas with Taproot you get, technically, there is no limit, but the mempool limit is 400 kilobytes. So it is a smaller limit, but you can still do a lot of things with these JSON protocols, or even with the like generative protocols that I told you about, using P2WSH. So that's kind of the current status of pay-to-witness script hash.
Cool. Thanks once again for the question. I think that's it for now as questions are concerned. Let's go for questions. Anybody, if you have any questions, pop them now. Yeah, Artem is following up with the P2WSH question. Does that mean that ordinals built from IC via P2WSH might be incompatible with standard ordinals and have some additional limitations?
Yes. So the current state is they're not shown in Explorers. We're working on that. They will. I don't know the timeline. Maybe it's weeks to get it into Ord. Maybe it's months, but I'm hoping that it's not months. That's a long time. I'm hoping it's weeks to get them in. So currently, yes, anything done with P2WSH is a cursed ordinal. I didn't even know if it was going to be possible to inscribe on the IC at all. This was like a massive endeavor that I worked on over the last like 72 hours, and finally figured it out and got an inscription out that actually worked. And so very, very happy that it's even possible. And yes, there will be some limitations if you want to inscribe directly from a canister. I haven't tested this 10 kilobyte limit, but I'm pretty sure that's the limit. It's like a serialization limit for P2WSH transactions. So I think you're limited to 10 kilobytes. I'm okay with that for 3 reasons. one, you can still do like BRC20, you can still do SATs, you can still do like any JSON protocol. Two, you can still do any kind of like generative image. So if you wanted to do like GBRC 721, or you wanted to do like the ORC 721 generative version, or we're also working on a generative standard. If you want to do any of those, like you can inscribe any of those specific ordinal types from the IC. And third, I think one of the things that I want to do, because even 400 kilobytes is still limiting for some artists, depending on the media that they want to put on chain. And so I think one of the things we want to do is we want to put a smaller image on Bitcoin with then a higher res image that's like paired with it, that's kind of off of Bitcoin but on ICP. And so I think those are the reasons why we can probably get around the 10 kilobyte limit in interesting ways that still makes it worth it. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of limiting, but not really.
Cool, thanks. And one final question, I guess. What's the best place to DM you on Twitter, I guess?
Yeah, if you just want to DM me on Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter and always pretty responsive. So yeah, feel free to just DM on Twitter and we can chat.
Yep. Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here, guys, because it seems that we have no more questions right now. But yeah, thanks, Bob, for coming in and holding a wonderful workshop and for answering all the questions that came your way very, very swiftly and very intelligently. As for the Internet Computer BUIDL Bitcoin Hackathon, this was supposed to be the last workshop, but we actually have one more on Monday. We're going to be joined by Max from DFINITY, who'll be talking about building with Solidity. And DFINITY are also now offering a complete new bounty for the hackathon for the best use of Solidity in a project, which amounts to $5,000 US. So yeah, my message is get building, guys. And yeah, thank you for coming and see ya on Monday.